All right, so some waiver wire for the next week. So obviously, if you're Aaron Rodgers owner, you probably need a quarterback. Now, some people are smart. Well, I can't say they're smart, but a little bit more conventional, you'd say, and they got two quarterbacks on their team. So, you've had Rodgers on your team all year, but then at the same time, you've had someone sitting on your background. Like someone in my league, he's got Aaron Rodgers, but he's got Deshaun Watson on his backup. So the Rodgers injury sucks, and yeah, he doesn't have that consistent number one every single week now, but he's got Deshaun Watson as a backup. So there are situations where you're not so fucked. If you're one of the guys that likes to draft two quarterbacks, you're not so fucked if your backup quarterback's not that bad. You're also not that fucked if you have people in your league that drop Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr, he wasn't great last week, but it was a good defensive game between the Raiders and the Chargers. But I think at this point, if you don't have Rodgers and you don't have anybody else to go to, I think Carr could be your best option if people are letting him go in leagues. And he may be right back because he only missed 1 week and he's already back. But going forward, you might have lost Winston. Winston might be out for a couple weeks. Now, some serviceable people. If Winston is out, I like Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a veteran. He's just a veteran in the game. And, he came in and he struggled at first, but as soon as he got going, he was awesome. Him and Bray had a good connection. He's a good quarterback. So Ryan Fitzpatrick is someone not to be scared of. He had 26 points in PPR leagues. Some other guys that I do like, Jared Goff has struggled the last 2 weeks, but let's talk about it. Let's say I like in the situation that, and the thing is if you're coming to a waiver wire, you ain't really needing a quarterback per se. But let's say you do need a quarterback, and let's say Rodgers is out, you don't have another guy, you might want to you're going to drop Rodgers and you're going to add somebody else. Your best bet at this point, you can take a chance on someone like Jared Goff. Some other guys, two guys that aren't as available in leagues, but are good quarterbacks that, they're pretty helter-skelter. You don't know what you're going to get out of them every week. They're not consistent like an Aaron Rodgers. But Trevor Siemian is a serviceable quarterback. Tyrod Taylor is a serviceable quarterback. One thing I will say about when you have a Tyrod Taylor or a Jacoby Brissett on your team, you can get the rushing touchdowns, which are 6 points instead of 4 in standard scoring leagues. I give my quarterback 6 in my league, so it doesn't really matter what kind of touchdown you score. You're getting 6 regardless. But Trevor Siemian and Tyrod Taylor are some serviceable quarterbacks. If you want to go out there, take a chance, go for Jared Goff. Case Keenum's a guy that he looks like he'll probably be the starter for most of the rest of the year. He's serviceable. Keenum's another guy to watch for. Colt Brissett's probably going to be coming out in the next couple weeks. Fitzpatrick, he's going to be coming out in the next couple weeks because Winston didn't really look like he got hurt that bad. He obviously came back in after he got injured, but then he left. I think it was more of they just got him out of there because the game was over. What's funny, though, is the game really wasn't over if Tampa Bay could have got a field goal, if they would have kicked the field goal before half instead of going for it, and a couple other things, they were only down by 3 points. Okay, so let's talk about the real meat this week is going to be the running backs. How it always is. It's really tough to find a running back now. A guy he's been performing the last 2 or 3 weeks, but we kind of hadn't really gave him. I hadn't really gave him the notoriety because I thought someone like Wayne Gallman would overtake him, or I thought Paul Perkins and Shane Vereen, all those guys in the backfield. Orleans Darkwa was a guy I just really didn't like. Basically, too, last year because he was traded for Ben Roethlisberger in my league last year. And so I've always kind of had a thing against Darkwa because I'm like, somebody traded a third-string running back for the Giants for Ben Roethlisberger. Now, that trade makes 0 sense in this year, but last year is a much different trade, a much more bullshit-ass trade. But Darkwa is my top guy of the week. He's my top ad. And he's a guy that he may be gone in some leagues. In the past couple weeks, I didn't really ever have him on my list, but other people could have had them on theirs as a guy to pick up. He's gotten touchdowns, I think, the last 2 weeks. And he's been pretty good on the ground, where the Giants just don't have an offense and have really needed a run game. He's really came through. And Paul Perkins was supposed to be the guy at the first year, and he just hadn't been it. If Darkwa can stay healthy, he's a guy that I like. Adrian Peterson had a huge week. I didn't expect Adrian Peterson to have that big of a week 1 there. for the Cardinals. But if you got him, good job. A lot of people don't even think started Adrian Peterson this week. Kind of just happy that he's on their team now, though. He looks like he's going to be a real top back. If you're at the bottom of your division, or bottom of your league, and you didn't make an effort to get Adrian Peterson to the waiver wire, you just don't care. This is going to be a huge pick for the rest of the year. And he's a guy that if you didn't drop him, kudos to you. Kudos for, hoping that, things were going to work out. Now, Dion Lewis is a guy that, he's in a backfield with tons of people. But Mike Gillislee did fumble on Sunday. You know how Belichick doesn't like fumbling. He usually gets them the hell out of there after they fumble once. Dion Lewis has been very serviceable. The last 2 weeks, I think he's had a touchdown. And then, they got James White. But Dion Lewis is a guy that I think he kind of can slip through. If there's not a guy, a Patriot-heavy guy in your fantasy league that's like, oh, I want my Dion Lewis or my James White. I think Dion Lewis could be a back that you could start at your flex or RB2, depending on what's going on with bye weeks and whatnot. Aaron Jones, I think the Packers, I said last week, he's going to be a guy to really, he's going to be a real top guy if you're able to grab him, and Ty Montgomery, his stock is just going to go down, and this was the first week of that. Now, Montgomery didn't really play a whole lot. Obviously the running game was totally thrown off. Now, this is something you got to understand about the Packers too. If the Packers were going into the game knowing I didn't have Rodgers, they would have prepared Hundy a little bit more for a run game. They would have prepared knowing that we're going to run the ball a lot. Next Sunday, I think is something that you're going to see out of the Packers. Packers are going to be run heavy. Try to get some of the pressure off Hundy. And that's something they didn't really get to plan for this week, knowing that, Rodgers, we thought Rodgers was going to run the ship, and we basically thought we were going to have a fucking coach on the field. And that just didn't happen, And, when you play a good defense like the Vikings are going to jump on that. It sucks that Rodgers got hurt. But, and it sucks too because Aaron Jones to me isn't as vital as he was last week, when I'm talking about adding him. But now, still, if they decide that they're going to have to be run heavy and they establish that run heavy, that's going to be that. Now, Jerick McKinnon had a serviceable week, 2 touchdowns, real good out of him. He could be your RB2. He definitely looks like he's definitely the points getter there in the Vikings lineup now with Cook out. Latavius Murray just doesn't have it. He can't really do shit. I don't know what was going on with the Raiders last year. The Raiders were fucking dominant last year. The Raiders sucked this year. Alvin Kamara rushed for 70 yards. I'm sure he caught some passes. He's a guy that he's probably not available in most leagues, but he's the perfect flex guy this season. Javaris Allen, Alex Collins, it's one of those things like which one do I pick? So that's always tough. They're still here. We'll see what happens with Derrick Henry, Marlon Mack tonight in that game. I could see them having somewhat games. Okay, and then Seattle was on a bye week, so, we got to talk about is it going to be Eddie Lacy, J.D. McKissick? We'll see what happens with the Seahawks moving forward with their running back position, and I hadn't been impressed, like I say every week, with Marshawn Lynch. He wasn't impressive again. Jalen Richard could be that guy. And then Elijah McGuire, when Forte and Powell been very disappointing. Elijah McGuire is a guy that you can pick up and stash. I think he could be a guy that could have a better year in the future. And then Deontay Foreman, he got some playing time with them being up by a good amount, and he got some good rushing yards this last week. So there. When we talk about tight ends, Evan Ingram had a good week. Talked about adding him last week. Cannon Bray's probably gone. He's had 2 awesome weeks in a row. Ed Dixon had a tough week after a really good week last week. Zach Miller's caught 2 touchdowns in a row. 2 weeks in a row. Austin Seferian-Jenkins caught a touchdown. He's a guy that I added to my list. Hunter Henry had 90 yards receiving, I think it was. And then Darren Fells is the tight end that plays for the Lions. He's honestly like the backup, but I think he's had 3 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. George Kettle, him and C.J. Beathard are playing together again. They played at Iowa together. Kettle had 6 points this week. Hooper had an all right week. Jesse James, all right. David Njoku. And then I would say A.J. Derby's a guy that you watch out for. I saw Sanders get hurt. And I think Sanders could be out for multiple weeks. So in that case, I like A.J. Derby, and then and another guy that I like that's kind of jumped up my board this week at wide receivers is Benny Fowler. Kind of surprised he's not a guy that's necessarily like performed in the last couple of weeks to get moved up my list, but it's more because of an injury. He's going to be more of the forefront. And he caught 2 touchdowns week 1. For some reason, Demaryius Thomas just doesn't catch touchdowns for the Broncos. But it's always Sanders or a tight end or Fowler. So I think Fowler could be a serviceable guy at your flex or wide receiver 2 these next couple weeks with Sanders out. Paul Richardson was on a bye this week. He's a guy that I like. J.J. Nelson, Josh Dotson caught a TD. He hadn't done awesome on the year, but he's a guy that if you're looking for a wide receiver to add, you could definitely add him. Cordell Patterson had a touchdown this last week. Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp are available in most leagues. Marquise Lee had a pretty good game. I think he had around 12 points or so in PPR. Taylor Gabriel had a tough week, but he's a guy that I like. He could be a big play guy. And then Robert Lewis Jr., Giants wide receiver. You never know about him. He could perform. And then, a guy that I hadn't had on this list, and I guess he's been dropped because, how bad the Dolphins' offense is. But, Dolphins' offense wasn't that bad last week. Kenny Stills is a guy that I found is available in a lot of leagues. Jaron Brown, Bryce Butler. Bryce Butler's been a pretty good receiver for the Cowboys this year. I think the Cowboys, with they hadn't played. Beasley hasn't been as much the guy. Bryce Butler has had some big catches this year. But other than that, pretty much the same. Juju Smith-Schuster kind of continues to kind of be all right. He didn't do a whole lot this week. But kickers, I still got Jake Elliott, Graham Gano. Graham Gano, I went ahead and put on the list. Steven Hauschka, he's pretty much my top out of the week with the weeks that he's had, the 3 weeks before his bye week. So Hauschka's a guy. Cameron Fireman, kicker for the Texans. He scores tons of points every week. And then Chris Boswell. Chris Boswell had like 2 or 3 field goals this weekend for the Steelers. He's always a pretty serviceable guy. So those are kind of some of the kickers that I like this week. Defenses, as much as I hate the Saints defense, I had to put them on this list. 26 before the bye week, 32 I think yesterday. They've been really good. And Lions was a team that I said not to start, and they had like 2 or 3 defensive touchdowns. Lions had a really good week. They're the team that I've been like the highest on defensively all year. Bills were on a bye. They're going to play Bucks this week. We'll see how that goes. Redskins played 49ers. They really weren't that impressive last week. I kind of put them on this list because of that. They're not a team that I'd put on in the future. Eagles have Redskins this week. They've been serviceable every week. They don't really ever do a whole lot, but they do just enough. Panthers are playing. Who are the Panthers playing? The Panthers are playing. I put the Panthers on. Panthers are playing Bears this week. I put them on this list because the Ravens scored a lot of points last week against the Bears. Ravens, scored 20 points. Probably got me a win in one of my leagues, starting them. And then Titans are playing the Browns this week. Titans are a team that nobody has defense. Nobody has their defense. So I think you can pick up Titans and really excel this week with them playing the Browns. It's always a good start to start against the Browns.